Hey everyone, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of you already joining us here today, so I think we're just going to kick it off. Let me say welcome. My name is Laura Herr. I am the Senior Director of Development and Alumni Engagement here at the Tepper School of Business, and I am absolutely thrilled to be kicking off the first in our webinar series. We're committed, as you know, to bringing this kind of continuing education for all of our alumni. So this is something that I'm just thrilled to be able to do today. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'd like you to spend more time with our panelists. You're going to have a lot of interesting conversation taking place today with Otis Greene, Tim Dean, John Tarnoff, Michael Herskovitz, and Colleen Paulson. So I'm going to kick it over as quickly as possible. But before I do that, I did want to share a few quick announcements for all of you, and then I'll do a couple rules of the road for the webinar and we'll get going. So first, as you can see on the screen, we have reunion coming up in May. We're celebrating our class years ending in 1s and 6s. And as usual, this is a fabulous event. We had a record number of registrants last year. We'll be continuing programming with beers, with a variety of faculty panels, and of course, the big celebratory event that we usually have at Acrisure, but we really like to say Heinz Stadium every year. Also coming up, we will have our undergraduate reunion celebration, which is taking place in April. So for our Tepper undergrads, we do want to have you come back and we'd love to see you. Also, a way for you to continue to engage. This is outside of the celebratory events of Reunion and Carnival, but I did just want to echo that this is a wonderful platform for Carnegie Mellon. You should have seen some announcements coming through over the last couple of months. This is called the community, which can sound a little bit confusing when you're trying to describe it to people, but it's essentially an internal portal, kind of like a LinkedIn type of platform for the Carnegie Mellon community, and it offers directories, news, and events. It offers a way for direct networking between alumni. So it's something that I strongly encourage you to take part in. And if you haven't already done so, go ahead and enter your information there, because it's a wonderful way for you to also access things like class notes and just, again, kind of directly connect with one another. So outside of that, in a second, I'm going to hand it over to Otis and the rest of your panelists. But before I do that, I did just want to give a couple of pointers before we get started. So we did receive a number of questions from all of you in advance of the webinar, which we have gathered. So we are going to make sure that we answer as many of those as possible. And we've set aside time at the end of the webinar today for you to hear from your panelists. And actually throughout the conversation, I think they're going to get to a lot of your questions. Now, having said that, if you have some questions that you would like to ask, do use the Q&A feature in the webinar screen in the Zoom platform, and I will be monitoring those and make sure that we can try to have those answered as well. Also, one more thing before I hand it to Otis. This is being recorded, and we will make sure that this gets posted in the coming weeks to our website and to the university YouTube account, pardon me, the Tepper YouTube account. We will also be sending a survey after the webinar to get your feedback and to also share any resources and information that come up today from your panelists. So with all that said, Otis Greene is your moderator today. He is an alum. He is an alumni board member. He is one of my favorite people, and I think also in the alumni office. He is recently retired from BlackRock. He is many things. He is a people manager. He is a business builder. He is a described eternal optimist, and has assured me that the water is just fine on the other side of retirement, that you all should consider it at some point, not today. So I'll let you take it away, Otis. Thank you so much for being here.
Great. Thank you very, very much, Laura, for getting us started today and for that warm intro. And thank all of you for dialing into today's session. You sent in many very good questions, questions that address career themes that are relevant and challenging, particularly for our alumni who graduated many years ago. The world has changed. The competition for good jobs has increased, but this community has a whole lot to offer. We're joined by experienced panelists from our alumni community. These are executive coaches who have helped many people navigate this environment and achieve successful outcomes. I'm going to begin by asking each of them to share a brief introduction, and then we're going to dive right into the questions that you all submitted and cover as much as we can during this time frame, during this webinar. So I'm going to begin with Colleen Paulson, who many of you know. Colleen, could you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Otis. So for those of you who I don't know, my name is Colleen Paulson. I graduated from CMU with a degree in mechanical engineering in 1996. And actually, thanks for the reminder, Laura, that it's time for me to start thinking about reunion already in Carnival. But after I graduated, I worked for Procter & Gamble for several years in product supply, earned my MBA from Pitt, worked for FedEx as an analyst, and then pivoted and kind of went out on my own. I was a contributor for the Motley Fool. And for the past 18 years, I've worked as a career coach. You know, as Otis said, this is a challenging market. And I founded my business, Ageless Careers, to really help folks of all ages figure out how to navigate the market. Right. When I graduated from CMU in 96, the world was different. You know, we looked at, how we were printing out, what paper we used to print resumes out. And that, I mean, today, and Otis is laughing, but we really took that seriously. And the world's not like that anymore. So, I'm very active on LinkedIn. If we're not connected there, please reach out and send me a connection request. I post tips there every day. But, I'm really excited about this because I know that this is a timely topic, and I know that we can really, cover a lot of ground in a short period of time.
Thank you for that, Colleen. We're so happy to have you on today's call. I'm going to now ask Tim Dean to introduce himself to the audience. Tim?
Thank you, Otis, and I'm just happy to be here. I'll be very brief. Tepper alum from '93, now joining you from Las Vegas. Just happy to help everyone who's listening and hearing. You're not alone. All of us are just so thrilled to be here to help and guide. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully you find this helpful and relevant.
I'm sure we will, Tim. Thank you so much. Michael Herskovitz, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi. Thanks, Otis. Michael Herskovitz. I was a 3-2 student, graduated back in the 82-83 timeframe, spent 40 years working in a variety of financial services firms, running technology and operations groups. Left the corporate world a little over a year ago and found my passion with coaching. Started working with technology people emerging, but I've actually found that the cohort we're talking to today, people that are in that career transition, I can relate to it well. And that's where I'm really hoping that I can impart some help along with my other panelists today.
Great. Thank you, Michael. We look forward to drawing from your many years of experience. And last but not least, John Tarnoff. John?
Thanks, Otis. Hi, everybody. I'm John Tarnoff. I live and work in Los Angeles. I'm an executive and career coach, focusing primarily on mid-career transitions for executives, director level and above, and tech, retail, finance, supply chain, and other sectors. I'm not a CMU alum, but I have a 20-year association with the university starting back when I was at DreamWorks Animation. I was an industry partner for the Entertainment Technology Center. And then after I left DreamWorks, was the head of industry relations for the Heinz College Entertainment Management Program based here in Los Angeles. And I've been in my career coaching practice for the past 10, 15 years, focusing again on this mid-career niche, and I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Thank you so much, John. And what we're going to do, everybody, just to kind of put you on my shoes, we got many questions that are related to themes that are very important and very personal for many of you on this call. Some are around artificial intelligence and how that's impacted the job market. Others are around career transitioning. Others are around job search strategies and the best way to prepare yourself for what's happening now. Others are around age and ageism and the impact of that when you're later on in your career. So we've got a number of different topics that we're going to try and cover today while we're on this call. I'm going to begin with artificial intelligence. We got a lot of questions in that time frame, or I mean, around that theme, I should say. And I'm going to, I'll just start off by asking Colleen to answer the first question, which is really kind of going to combine two, but kind of a theme that kept recurring. It was, given the rapid progression of artificial intelligence and machine learning, what approaches make the most sense to sort of delay career obsolescence? And along those lines, what advice do you have to someone who may have lost their job based on changes that their company made with to implement artificial intelligence? Colleen?
Yeah, so this is the hot topic right now. Everyone's trying to figure out, kind of what end is up, especially Duolingo recently announced that they're AI first. What does that even mean? I just came back from SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management Executive Network in San Diego, and we were talking a lot about what AI looks like both in the workplace and in hiring. And so companies are trying to figure out obviously how to use AI to gauge candidates, and then they're finding deepfakes. So from the company standpoint, they're looking at that. As a candidate, I like to tell my clients that you can really lean into being human, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're the ones who are training AI, and so yes, there are things that you can utilize AI as part of your job search, and even obviously you want to stay up to date on what's going on. You want to if you're not well versed, you want to start taking classes. You want to understand where your industry is going. If you were impacted by AI, if you lost your job because of AI, then there's a lot of things to think about. I mean, what I recommend folks start doing immediately, no matter what your role is think about where your industry is going in the next 5 or 10 years. What are the trends? And whether, again, if you need to upskill, what can you do to show companies that you're on trend and that you understand what their challenges are?
Thank you. Anyone else want to sort of add to share their responses, their thoughts on AI and sort of how that's impacting a lot of us right now? Anybody else on the panel?
I would just say that we are in kind of early mid days of this revolution, and I don't think anyone really knows where it's going. And I think we have to be a little bit both skeptical, and I think at the same time not kind of give in to the panic that I think is widely propagating, certainly through the pages of LinkedIn. Around the impact of this, and to really, for all of us, particularly those of us who've been around for a while, to really focus on the core foundational principles, values, and skill sets that we bring to the table. Yeah, I think people will be disrupted. There will be jobs that are going to get impacted by AI. I would say, from my observation, that these are jobs that tend to be on the earlier part of the curve, the career curve, and that as we get into the more insight-based and strategic-based roles, this is going to have less of an impact, but it's going to force us to be on our game and to really drill down to what that value proposition is that we deliver, that cannot be commoditized, that cannot be simply done as part of a rote, memorized kind of workflow, and really stand out through that insight.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll agree with everything that John said. The piece I would just add to it is I think it's really imperative to have some competency in the world of prompt engineering, because that world is not going away, and you have to figure out how to leverage it to make yourself more productive. And personally, I found some of the courses that were out there, especially Andrew Ng, NG's course through deep learning, was really good, accessible, and anybody that went to Tepper can easily get through that quickly.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And thanks to all the panelists for that. And we will come back with a few more questions on AI. I did want to touch on another hot area, if you will, where we got a lot of questions, and that was around career transitioning. Many people on this call have been in their career, they're well into their career, they've been in for a long time. They've been big contributors to wherever they worked, or they've built businesses, or they've done a little bit of both. And they're at a stage in their career where they're trying to figure out kind of what's next. And so a great question that came in was, read it verbatim, for senior professionals looking to pivot into a new field, how do you suggest we cope with the financial impact, especially when you're stepping down from a senior role into maybe a more junior role? You know, how can we reframe this temporary setback, is how they defined it, as part of a slingshot effect that ultimately propels us forward? So for people who are really good at something, but they recognize that they've got to pivot, and they may have to pivot into something that might not be lateral, it might even be more junior. Is that a good idea? Is it the right way to think about it? I'll ask Michael to start us off on this one. Michael?
Okay, this is a really interesting question, and I think you have to be realistic about this and recognize that none of our careers really move in a straight line overall. And as you're moving further in your career, you actually have a lot less control over what's going to happen because you're probably more senior. The pyramid gets a little tighter, and this notion of stepping back a little bit financially is one you got to be prepared for. I fortunately had the experience a couple of times, when I left big job to go to work in the first internet boom for a startup, and went to make no money and figured out how to adjust the lifestyle. But I would say that the way I thought about it and the way I reframed it was to think about it as your sort of income stream overall is the area under the curve. It's not the maximum of that curve. And kind of we always think about in our careers, am I getting into a role that's helping me make more? It's going to give me benefits. And you get past that point at a certain stage in your career. And then you think about, how do I elongate the career where I might be making less over time, but I'm actually doing more things that I like, and I can do it longer. And I think it's a better way to reframe that, because we're all probably, thank God we're healthier, hopefully living longer, and we got to find a way to keep ourselves active mentally in that way. So that's my reframing of it.
Thank
If
you,
I could
Michael.
jump
And
in, Otis, can
go
I
ahead,
just
Tim.
jump in on that?
Sure.
And thank you, Michael. It's really fascinating because even as you were describing the question, and you're so right, so many of us have just taken journeys that we could never have anticipated and certainly could not have foreseen. And I've restarted a number of times, taken kind of the pay cuts, if you will, started a business, even though I convinced myself I was never an entrepreneur. So I think it's just helpful to recognize, yes, it may have not been on the original intent. Certainly it wasn't the ideal. Yet, what are the benefits that are more longer term, longer curve, as Michael was talking, that start the next phase? And that's, to me, kind of a big aha was, let's focus maybe less on too far out, just what do you want to do next? As my coach even helped me challenge as I just relocated back to the States is, Tim, what do you want to experience in your next calling? And I thought that was just a beautiful, tangible question to allow that thinking. Then worry less about, is this a pay cut? Is it a step back? I don't think that's ever a thing. Yes, it might be making less money, but none of it is ever a step back. It's always just a next step to something. And positioning it that way can have all the difference.
Thank you, Tim. Would any of our other panelists want to add a comment or two on career transition?
I would just say be careful about focusing on too broad a shift. I think there's a reflexive kind of panic that sometimes people get into about the path forward. It's like they don't see the path forward, so they think they've got to take a 90-degree turn to something completely different and try that. And my observation is that is not necessarily a good idea. You don't want to start over. You don't want to take all of the value that you have accumulated and the experience that you've gained and ditch that to try to start over in something else. I would say you want to look at what you've done perhaps differently and reevaluate where what you bring to the table can be applied in somewhat new or different ways, but still rely on that strength that you bring to the table.
Yeah, one final, John, I always call it skill stacking, right? So, my undergrad is in engineering, and now I'm a career consultant 30 years later. I never would have dreamed that that would ever be where I would end up, but that's,
Sure.
because, and I decided for myself, I wanted flexibility. That's why I am where I am. So it really comes down to values and what is most important to you. And that's for each person what they're going to decide, and then that's going to change over time. What I valued 30 years ago was travel and making the biggest salary that I could. Today it's more of flexibility and staying closer to home. So each person in their situation is going to have their own factors, but I ask folks to think about skill stacking and transferable skills. It all fits together, so you're never leaving it behind. It's always part of who you are.
I love the idea of skill stacking. I would also offer the concept of portfolio
Yes.
as another paradigm to think about, and really looking at the ways, and again, calling to your point about each person being individual. A lot of people will do what you do. They will have had the same job description, same titles, but no one does what you do quite the way you do it. And I think that goes to this idea of portfolio, that you're bringing all sorts of skill sets and life skills as well, and life experiences that are relevant. So try to integrate all of who you are into these next steps going forward.
I love it.
Thank you all for that. This is really heating up fast, and this is exactly what we want. And I'm sure the audience is enjoying this as much as I am right now.
We're just getting started, Otis.
All right, well, roll up your sleeves because now we're about to have some fun. Job search. All of us have a friend or two or three or ourselves who are out of work or actively looking, and many of us on this call are at different stages. The question that came in directly, I kind of view this as two-part. The first one was sort of a general question around how do you approach a job search when you're in your early 60s, and you can expand that to say, 50s, 60s, even 70s, because we've got a lot of folks who are very productive, who enjoy working, who've made great contributions and want to continue to work, and they found themselves out of work, and they want to understand, or they want some guidance on the best steps to take right now to help land that next gig. So the first part of the question is, what advice do you have for people in that age range, if you will, as they look for new opportunities? And then the second question will dive more into resume and LinkedIn sort of guidance. I'd love to hear from everyone on this panel for these questions. Whoever would like to go first, how would you approach this if you're in your late 50s, 60s, et cetera? I'd feel free to chime in.
Well, maybe I'll start, and then I'm sure everyone will have some good reaction to that. First thing, I'll tell you that it's hard. And probably what isn't going to work is when you start applying to all the open roles on LinkedIn. You can apply all day long, but yeah, if you hear something back, God bless you. It really, there's a couple of things that I think are really imperative. First is get ready to hear a lot of no, because it's not always about you. It's the circumstances you're in. A couple things that I found were valuable for me. Several things. One was to work with a professional resume writer on actually making the resume a lot more visually pleasing, and the LinkedIn profile more visually pleasing, and reorient it away from telling about the role that you had, but more about yourself and what you've accomplished. And it's more about outcomes. And I wound up writing several pages around key projects, initiatives that I worked on, what my role was. And I found that to be very valuable as I went and started talking to people about roles, and also to discover for myself, what is it I liked and what did I keep coming back to? The hard thing for me in some of that area to get used to was actually calling on people that used to work for me and asking them what's going on. Because usually, you get to a certain stage, you call your peers, you call somebody you used to work for, but then you realize a lot of them have retired and they're not in there anymore. And getting past that mental hurdle of calling somebody that, that I may have given some career advice or other things to, and that worked out just fine in certain cases. But I think that was a process, and I'm sure others have had different things to say, but it's going to be a different approach than where you got your current job.
Well, I'll stack on that. Thank you, Michael. I think I appreciate your personal angle on this as well. I will say something maybe a bit controversial, which is that your resume is not going to get you your next job. That the resume has become devalued in this process. It is your placeholder. It is your ID that kind of gets you into their system and that lets them track you. But your LinkedIn profile is where your career is going to be made or broken. And that you also, particularly if you are experienced, you don't want to be a supplicant. You don't want to be going hat in hand into a job opportunity, pleading with them to be hired. With age comes experience, but it also sets up an obstacle for you, which is because you are older and experienced, you should have everything figured out. So the idea that you're kind of coming into a position and interviewing, being considered by a hiring manager or recruiter who is likely a lot younger than you are, is that you want to bring a certain mindset and attitude into that process. You want to know what you do. You want to have a clear sense of what you deliver, what I call the superpower, this combination of everything that you've done, the values, the impact, the deliverables. You're not looking to take direction from a manager. You're looking to provide leadership, no matter at what level you are going in. And your growth mindset, your service mindset, your preparation for this, and your, let's just call it equanimity about what you represent and what you do, what you can deliver is what's going to rule the day. Don't approach job hunting in your 50s or 60s the way you would have done it in your 20s, 30s, or 40s.
If I can add on again, and Colleen's going to be your expert for kind of how to do the LinkedIn aspect of it. So I'll let her chime in on that second part of the question you presented, Otis. And I'm going to agree, something John said is so true. To me, the resume is truly just, I feel, used just to get an interview. Once you get in, it's irrelevant. Then the rest of the task and the skills are different of how you storytell and present and to transfer skills, etc. But something that I use with my clients always, especially the older ones, is take a self-assessment of what are your core strengths that really you want to be doing in any next position that you've honed over these decades, if you will. And that once you have those identified, it just really gives those individuals a focus point of, okay, let me focus on jobs that are looking for opportunities to demonstrate this skill, this strength, this skill, this strength. And what it does is it changes the spray and pray technique of something Michael said is, do not be applying to every job on LinkedIn and thinking it's going to work. It's when you have that clarity of strength focus, you're then able to laser in on the opportunities, the companies, the contacts that value that want to pay for that will refer you to individuals that are looking for that. So it kind of sounds counterintuitive because you're not applying as much, you're just targeting it much myopically, but your strengths give you that direction of what should be included in anything you're applying for.
So I think the two pieces of advice that I would have is, number one, don't be surprised about the ageism. I think I just turned 50 and I work with clients all the time who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s and beyond. And they're like, I plan to work another 10 or 15 years. We're all living longer. So it's like it is kind of counterintuitive that folks would not value that wisdom and experience, but you're going to face it, and that's okay, because the right company will see what you have to offer. I just had a client land. He's 67 years old, and he landed at a startup, so it can happen. The other piece is LinkedIn, and often I'll talk with folks, again, those of us who are in our 50s and 60s, and they're like, I don't do social media, I'm not going to go on LinkedIn. Do not. Now, I use LinkedIn as social media. I've grown my following to 75,000 plus followers. I run my business off of LinkedIn. That's different. If you are a job seeker and you don't have an optimized profile, I guarantee you're missing out on opportunities. The data is there. 90+% of recruiters use LinkedIn to find talent. And if you're an executive and you're looking for an executive role, executive headhunters and recruiters are on LinkedIn looking for folks. So yes, you absolutely need to, tap into your network. You need to, do all the things. But if you're not, and you don't ever have to post on LinkedIn. I don't care if you ever post. But if you don't have a strong profile, and that means like you need to have details so people can find you. Just having the title COO, that's not enough. I had a client recently, he was a VP at a Fortune 500 company. His goal was to become a CMO. He had never been a CMO before. But we talked about how he advised the CMO, reported to the CMO, made sure those keywords were in his profile. So then guess what? He had a whole bunch of CMO offers because when a recruiter searches based on CMO, they find him. Those are the kind of principles I want you to think about when you're optimizing your profile.
I want to stay on that point, particularly because my eyes were open as we were kind of preparing for this like a few months ago. The difference between what a resume is versus a LinkedIn profile. Many of us, myself included, thought that LinkedIn was basically copy paste your resume onto your profile with a nice headshot and don't say anything stupid, right? And what I learned from this group was that it's much more than that, or it can be much more than that. Would anybody like to comment on that?
Otis, I'm okay if folks copy it. I've looked at thousands upon thousands of LinkedIn profiles, and most folks just they leave it as a shell. There's nothing in it. So, they use it as a placeholder. They probably haven't connected with people for 10 years. And so I, as a base, if people want to copy paste in, like that it doesn't concern me. But if you really want to take it to the next level, think about the type of opportunities you're trying to attract and the type of and the presence that you want people to see for you. Like I'll have clients tell me, I don't know if I want to update my profile because I don't want my employer to think that I'm looking for a job. Well, I mean, think about your clients. Think about the presence that you want to have and you want your company to have. That's what LinkedIn is. So you've got to, again, I don't care if you ever post, but if you don't have a strong profile, I guarantee you the competition does. And they're attracting opportunities that you're not getting.
So if I may, let me just throw some practical instructions out there for people who are wondering about this. Your profile photo should not be a photo of you in the distance holding your pet at a barbecue. It should be a smiling, confident headshot, well lit, doesn't have to be professional, but so that people can really get a sense of your face. You want to have a background banner, whether it is the city you work in, some piece of art that's meaningful to you, some symbol of the industry that you're in. Your headline is not your job title. It should be a collection of 3, 4, maybe 5 expressions of the role that you do, starting from the more general down to the more granular. Your about section, in my view, is not a bio. It's not a listing of your skills. It's not some kind of long third person of bio. It should be a mission statement. You're trying to get above the noise, get into conversations with people. So your about section needs to be about who you are, why you do what you do, and where you want to take it. Add a couple of case studies of where you really excelled, an achievement that or two that really stood out that relate to your why. And then your experience section, yeah, that's your resume. But I would say the LinkedIn experience section is your master resume. Very often I see people with very extensive PDF paper resumes, and the LinkedIn experience section is just very sketchy and it's got some details or not. It's like they're focusing all on the resume. I would flip that, make sure that your LinkedIn is the definitive source of truth about your background. And then you use your paper PDF resume to apply specifically when you are submitting on an application to angle the information towards that particular job.
Just because those were such great points, John. For experienced people, you need to be careful about dates too. So graduate, and this is, and here's the other, if you talk to 10 different people in the career space, you're going to get 10 different answers. My view on it is that you don't put graduation year. It just ages you. And then as far as dates go, see, and that's the thing, we're all going to disagree, but I've had clients who have been, my 67-year-old client, he was without work for 18 months when he was honest about when he graduated from school and his experience dating back to 1976. I mean, transparent. He showed the dates. We took some of those early dates out and started from like 1997 on. And then literally within 2 weeks, he started landing opportunities. It doesn't feel fair. And that's my experience. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it.
So I, we get into this conversation all the time in this space. My feeling about the dates is that if you are trying to hide your dates and hide information about the extensive nature of your career, this idea of, don't list anything on your resume or your profile that is more than 10 or 15 years older. I think what you're doing there is you're devaluing your experience, you're devaluing your age. And I hear you in your particular instance. Maybe correlation is causation. I give you the benefit of the doubt on that. I would just say that if you are going to hide your age, what else are you hiding? And that for the employers who are concerned about age, they're going to exclude you from the prospect no matter what. They're going to find an excuse to not consider you. But you want to find people who value your age, who value your experience. So I would say stand up for it. And at the end of the day, what really makes the difference is, are you the right fit for that position? Can you deliver what they want for this role? Do you come across as someone who is focused, vital, energetic, enthusiastic, committed to that role? And those are the factors that I think are most important.
Yeah. Just one more quick thing. So I'm not about erasing experience. Like for my Procter & Gamble experience is 30 years old. I would never erase it. And there are some coaches out there that will tell you only show the last 10 to 15 years. So for me, I do include that both in my executive summary and at the end of the resume, maybe with dates, maybe without. And the other piece is, you don't know who's reading that resume. So sometimes it's a recruiter who maybe wasn't born in 1996, and they're the first line. So that's where this all gets really tricky. But I'm really glad we're having this conversation, because it's good for people to know if they're confused. Yeah. We all look at it differently too.
So I want to take this opportunity, and Tim and Michael, please jump in here, to kind of pivot our conversation or leverage our conversation into the point that kind of comes off of what you were just talking about, Colleen, which is about the person who's reviewing a resume. If everything is about the resume and that's where it's going to, pivot on the decision, yeah, you got to make sure that that's all loaded in. But my whole focus in working with people is to get them out of this paper exchange or the resume process, the application process, and focus on conversations. Because I think it's, at the end of the day, it's all about your network. It's all about getting referrals. And all of this other stuff should be the kind of the foundation to get you into that conversation,
Right.
because
Right.
that's what's really going to move the needle. So let's talk about networking.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say, let me dive in here for a second because the networking piece is important. And when we conclude the networking piece, I want to try and get to some of the Q&A from callers that have questions that have come up while we've been on this session. But you can't go without networking. Everybody I know who's been through this and had success had a great resume. I'm sure everybody on this call has a great resume. You went to a great school. You probably got great experience. You might have to tighten it up, but you've got the body of work there to prove that you're ready, that you're up for the task. And then the LinkedIn profile, a lot of people probably nailed it. A lot of people probably need a lot of help, right? And so it's great that it's important that people understand, like you've got to have that presenting the information the right way. You've got to get that out there just to be included in more searches and raise your probability of getting a call. But everybody I know, nearly everybody I know, has mentioned networking to some degree. They've said, hey, I had this and I had that, and then I got a call from, or I reached out to, or whatever, and that's ultimately how I landed on my feet. I don't think most people on this call would disagree that networking can be beneficial. I do think that many people on this call might struggle with networking because you have people who are just naturally have I don't know, extroverted disposition. They're just friendly and they love talking with everybody. They can run their mouth all day. I'm probably in that camp. All right. But then you have other people, especially at a school like CMU, we've all got friends who are more introverted, who don't quite necessarily have that same comfort level with striking up a conversation with a stranger. So my question is, if we can assume that yes, networking is beneficial, what advice or suggestions would you have for people who are not comfortable being proactive about reaching out to people from the past, maybe people they haven't spoken with in a long time?
Right. Maybe I'll start with this because I'm sorry, Tim, do you want to go, Tim?
No, please, I'll follow you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, first off, let me just admit that I'm the poster child for introversion here. So I'll tell you what my experience has been. A couple of things. First, when people have ever called me and asked me for, hey, could you talk for a few minutes? I'm always going to say yes. And then I turn it around when people are hesitant and say, you would probably help somebody else out, right? So why wouldn't you do the same thing? Somebody else wants to help you. Keep that in mind. All right. Tepper folks, we're analytical. I don't know if everybody realizes it. You can download all of your LinkedIn contacts, put them in a spreadsheet, organize it. A lot of people you might have forgotten about. You figure out, oh, I don't know where all these people have gone to. They're working. I'm going to walk through that. There are some companies that I might be interested in. I realize I've got 3 ex-colleagues who have moved to places I didn't know about. Be strategic about that. And in many cases, it's just fine to catch up with people and have that lead to one thing or another. And the same way we're doing a video conference here, it's just fine. Things have changed quite a bit. You don't have to say, hey, I'll be in your city. Let's get together. 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And it's okay. What's the worst that's going to happen? Somebody says, oh, we'll do it after Labor Day or something. And then you hit them up again. So I would say, get out of your shell. It's okay. And use your analytical skills to sort of work through all of those various contacts and determine, here's places I might want to talk to or people, and then use that to get another contact.
And that's excellent advice, Michael. I will add, and I was seeing some of the questions that are being submitted in real time, that many people are unemployed currently, and they're concerned about like skill loss or how to stay relevant with recruiters. And I think there's an opportunity to mesh these two things together, because something that I recommend and many clients are doing is, while you have the job search time and you're more clear and directed on a company or an industry or a direction you want to go, what can you do to build this skill around that industry while you're waiting for maybe interviews, etc., or job openings? Is volunteering, signing up for task forces, doing this. I mean, I'm a poster child for trying to get more involved in coaching and academia. So what better way to show keeping skills up than doing something like this? So what it does is it provides more opportunities to get out of that shell and network, either, virtual, sure, but certainly face to face is the better way, certainly for networking. But maybe there's things, events or showcases or something in that company where you can then go volunteer in their booth or just be a person. You're going to meet people, you're going to network, you're going to keep skill up, and that circle back then becomes something on LinkedIn under volunteering that recruiters will see currently 2025 that reinforces the passion you've mentioned in your about that John talked about. So there's sanity behind all of this when it's done with a process that makes sense. And it's the targeted way of, this is kind of what I want to do, or damn it, this is exactly what I want to do. I'm just not getting the bites. Keep the interest, find other ways to show interest, and then it'll be rewarded after.
I can just jump on top of that, Tim. I love those ideas. And two other things I would just suggest. One is just as a matter of principle, I like to say to my clients, always be giving in your network. Always, in kind of a funny Pareto principle flip, spend 80% of your time networking, sharing information, trying to help other people, and 20% of your time asking for favors, so that you're perceived as someone, when you contact someone, their immediate reaction is, oh, what do they want? Or, oh, I haven't found a job, they're asking me for another referral. No, you're going to give them something that's valuable. You've seen a McKinsey report that's relevant to their sector that you are going to share, whatever that is, a conference coming up. And the other thing is to be curious, is to really, if you're kind of an introverted person and you don't know what to say, do some research. Focus on the areas that you're most interested in, what's developing in the business. Ask other people about these areas so that you can start engaging in interesting conversations that both reveal your commitment to the work that you do, but also bring up sufficient kind of action activity that people will say, wow, that person is really, they may be not working right now, but they're certainly in it. They're certainly not letting sleeping dogs lie, right? They're very engaged in what they do. So maybe I can refer them. And then I'll make a final controversial statement that's gotten me in trouble before, which is that if you've been out of work for a while and you're not getting a lot of traction, you might want to consider putting at the top of your experience section a consulting shingle, some kind of entry that essentially is your ideal job description. Talk about what you do, what you could offer as a consultant. And you don't necessarily have to position it as an ongoing business, but you can say you're making yourself open to this opportunity, based on your X years of experience. You are focusing on offering these kinds of services or these kinds of deliverables to people in the sector. Some kind of description that really, at the end of the day, if someone is looking at your profile and thinking, well, what have they been doing since March of 2024 when they were last at this company, you're engaged in something. And they can look at that and go, oh, what they do or want to do or are offering to others is very congruent with what this particular position is. Let's have a conversation.
Thank you, John. And guys, time is absolutely flying. I cannot believe how much time we've covered already. I just took a brief look at the questions that came in while we've been on this call. I want to make sure that we hit this next one before we run out of time. I think we've got about 8 minutes left before the bottom of the hour. And this question, it does touch on AI, but at least in my reading of it, it touches also on the emotions that a lot of people are feeling. And I think it's important that all of us kind of, that all the panelists kind of speak to this. I'll read the question. It said, I really appreciate Tim's approach of being okay with taking 2 steps back, but it does require patience and perseverance. Is it normal to feel anxious about becoming stale or losing the AI skills or really any skills. I mean, you can really apply this to anything. Is it normal to feel anxious about losing skills, falling behind? How do you stay sharp and how do you stay relevant while waiting for the right opportunity? When I read this, it's to me, at least, I'm not sure who posted this, but to me, it's less about the AI part. It's, hey, this feels like shit, pardon my language, but like how do I muscle through this? How do I stay relevant? How do I stay in the game? Would love to hear from everyone on this, and then I'll probably hit it over to Laura because we'll probably be out of time.
Quickly. So job loss is a top 5 life stressor, and we don't talk about that enough. So we talk about, grief from losing a family member, but job loss is right up there. And I find with folks, I call it like being on tilt, where like it's a bad beat in poker, where that emotion just builds up inside of you. And I will see clients who've been working for 35 years and never, always work, never was without a job. And then they lose that job and they feel like they did something wrong, they beat themselves up, and then they go into interviews and they can't shake it. So this is such an important piece. And I don't care who you talk to, whether it's a trusted friend, your spouse, partner, a coach, whatever that is, but you need to get that out somehow because it's real. And again, we don't talk about it as coaches. We know it because we hear it every day, but you're not alone and you're not, just don't do your best to not internalize that and really give yourself credit for everything that you've done in your career, and you will get through this.
Right. 100% there. A couple things. It is going to feel normal to be anxious, and that's not that's a human reaction to it. And it is kind of normal to think, are my skills going to atrophy, and what should I do about it? And one thing which I found was helpful for me was staying in touch with colleagues, ex-colleagues, and just being, I think some of the things that John mentioned about showing that intellectual curiosity, just to talk to them about what's going on and sort of picking up on cues about what's happening, what's going on. I found that was a very good way just to keep that mind working on, some of the topics, industry trends that, you don't want to lose touch of as you're going through this. And it is a bit hard. But you gotta make a little effort in that regard. And I think it can go a long way with it.
I would also add that if there is a opportunity for you to get a certification, do some kind of educational outreach, something to kind of get in a cohort with other people who are learning. I mean, lifelong education is lifelong today, right? You can't just kind of dine out on the degree that you earned 20, 30 years ago. You've got to keep learning. And if you are currently in a program, and AI, of course, is a perfect opportunity now to learn about AI, get some kind of advanced certification. There are a number of programs out there that are excellent. You are demonstrating through your actions that you are on top of it, that you are using that growth mindset to grow and learn. And that represents the kind of person that you are that is going to be, who's going to be an asset to someone who's going to hire you. So I would, and you're going to feel better about yourself because you're learning something, you're taking a step, you're being proactive. So I would absolutely add that to the list.
And I'll just put a bow on it just quickly. The older we are, the more times we've gone through it. Certainly the very first time is the most challenging. Of course, it's a loss. I mean, you got to take the time, as Colleen was saying, mourn it and give it its space. When you go through it and then get something after, you realize, and then it happens again and you're like, that's less of an impact. So hopefully, if you're younger, know that there is light at the end. If you're older and more seasoned and you've been through it a couple times, hopefully you've had history and proven that most likely something else better came from it. And that's the learning that continues to drive you through the journey of it, that any recruiter is going to recognize as a pro.
Great. To our panelists, Michael Herskovitz, Tim Dean, John Tarnoff, Colleen Paulson. Really want to thank you for sharing your expertise and your insights with this community. One additional ask I'll have of all of you is that any specific resources, specific websites, books, podcasts that you want to share with the community, that you share that with Laura and Janice and team, with the Tepper alumni team, so that we can get that information out to everyone who dialed in. And before I turn it over to Laura to conclude, I really want to thank this audience for leaning in, for sharing these questions, for the comments on the Q&A, recognizing this is a talented audience, recognizing that these are big people who've done big things for a long time and are just trying to navigate a world that's got a little topsy-turvy in recent years, but where we still have a lot to offer. So I'm going to now hand it over to Laura, who will help us wrap up. Laura?
Hey everyone, thank you so much. I am sure well, I can speak for myself. I was taking copious notes. So I did the first time that we even prepped with all of you, and then again from this. So I definitely found it to resonate with me, and then based on the conversation I was seeing in the Q&A, it did for everyone as well. So thank you to each of you, because it really is information that I don't think we're otherwise paying attention to as the industry just continues to shift and people can kind of feel out of touch. I will make one comment as it was coming up with skill set, because I would be remiss if I didn't. Tepper does have an executive education suite of courses, and I'm mentioning that to everyone who's attending today because as alums, you do get a discount, and there are actually a number of them that are touching on AI and how to put that into either communication or business strategy or leadership for the future. So just as you're thinking about skill sets, just take a look at it. That's not really a push per se, but it is a benefit you get as an alum. So I didn't want to not mention that. So again, in addition to saying thank you to all of our panelists and our moderators, moderator, sorry, Otis, there's just only one of you. Just don't forget it's being recorded. So this will post in a couple of weeks, and we will be sending information to all of the attendees afterwards. That will include any resources that we get from the panelists. I will gather that for all of you, and that will be sent out along with basically a survey so that we can continue to assess what types of webinars you all would like to continue to see and hear about. And then hopefully in the coming weeks, we're going to have more information too on some upcoming webinars. So stay tuned for that as well. And again, thank you all. This was wonderful, and enjoy the rest of your day. Stay cool out there.